It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. Oh, here we are, the final day of 2020. And I just know for a fact that too many of us, myself included, are going to fall into this trap. Thank God this year is over. And then we're going to wake up tomorrow and realize nothing has changed in 24 hours. Or in that one tick. In that one tick from a second before midnight to a second after midnight. No, we still got the same world, the same problems. But we can have a new commitment. We can have that. So let's think of it that way. We can recommit to doing everything in our power to making a better world. All right, so before we get started on today's show, I'm going to do something a little unusual. I think I may have only done this once or twice before in the past. I'm going to play a little clip from yesterday's show. Well, correction, it never played in yesterday's show. I regularly go over my time, and then I just do a little quick edit before I get the show out to you guys. So yesterday I just went on, and I thought, you know what, I'd like to share it with you. So here's a clip from yesterday's show, and then we'll finish up. Here's another story that got our attention as the year is waning. Because of the economic hardship, more Americans than ever are shoplifting. An estimated 54 million Americans are currently struggling with hunger. SNAP and WIC benefits have been reduced, except for a couple of minor bumps here in the emergency legislation. So as a result, according to the Washington Post here, who did the reporting, though shoplifting tends to spike during national crises, the current trend line is skewing even higher. Yeah, they've been tracking thefts since March, and people are stealing food. They interviewed one woman who's taken up shoplifting as a means of survival, and she's quoted as saying, "I don't feel much guilt about it. It's been very frustrating to be part of a class of people who is losing so much right now, and then to have another class who is profiting from the pandemic. Well, let's just say I don't feel too bad about taking $15 or $20 of stuff from Whole Foods when Jeff Bezos is the richest man on earth." Yeah, it's kind of tough to argue with that logic. So, yeah, we're stealing food, which reminded me of Emma Goldman's quote, the great social anarchist, that I couldn't quite remember, so I looked it up. "Ask for work," she said. "If they do not give you work, ask for bread. If they do not give you work or bread, then take bread." Emma Goldman. Yep, so Americans are shoplifting. No, it's not looting. They're not taking TVs. They're taking food primarily. Diapers for their babies. Yeah, that's what's flying off the shelves these days. From the new class of shoplifters at the highest rate we've seen in decades. So, isn't 2020 an interesting year? And then one last little note that I want to clear off my stack today is the Nashville bomber. And there's really nothing much to say about this guy except, of course, a white guy, 63 years old. They don't know too much about him yet, except it appears he was a conspiracy theorist. He was paranoid about 5G. There's pretty heavy speculation that that's why he targeted AT&T. And apparently he was a hunter of lizard people. And if you are not familiar with this line of thinking, well, I'll admit I'm not much familiar either. But it's part of the wider world of conspiracy theorists. It's very much embedded in QAnon. And you and I haven't talked much about these folks. And I'll admit I haven't looked deeply into it. I've only read short articles and perused headlines. But that fringe right now, whose fringiness has become kind of uncomfortably mainstream as they proudly hold up their giant Q letters at the rallies of the Orange Menace. where QAnon sympathizers are elected to Congress. Yeah, the wacky right-wing fascist nutjob wing of American politics, where Democrats are pedophiles, and even worse, they literally eat babies, where Kamala Harris is actually a lizard person wearing a mask. The most absurd, laughable, unthinkable delusions are finding their way into the American political landscape. They are penetrating. They are part of that 18% who consider the Orange Menace the most admired man in America when they talk to the Gallup pollsters. I don't know how high of a percentage, but way higher than ought to be possible. And now one of them has bombed one of the most iconic neighborhoods in one of America's most iconic cities. Anybody who's ever been to Nashville, anybody who's ever been to Honky Tonk Row, that's a place that is beloved. That's a place that once you've been there, it's yours forever. You take it back with you wherever you go. It's like Bourbon Street. It's like Times Square. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge. If you've spent any time there at all, you love it. And you love it forever. And it stays with you. And now one of these fringe lunatics has turned this great little spot into the aftermath of a war zone. The blown out buildings, the debris. I mean, my God, have you seen the pictures? And though we don't have strong evidence, we haven't, often we'll see the social media afterwards and it's just filled with political screeds and we know exactly where the bomber or the shooter is coming from. We don't have that with this guy. But we do have the 5G connection and we've got the lizard people connection. So all best wishes and good thoughts to the people of Nashville, and all best wishes and good thoughts to all of us who have quite a job ahead of us here. We got to turn the page not only on 2020, we got to turn the page on the last 4 years. And we have to do everything in our power to mitigate the damage of these evildoers and evil thinkers and advance the love and the light that most of us, the great vast majority of us, hold in our hearts. I know we do. I still believe that with zero doubt, that the good guys outnumber the bad guys. But we have work to do, let me tell you. So there you go. That was some commentary from yesterday's show that did not make the final edit. I went over my time. And by coincidence here, I can follow up on this QAnon thing. I mentioned in that clip that I don't know the percentages of people who believe crazy things. And just by coincidence, I opened up my feed today and I saw this headline. Even if it's bonkers, polls find many believe QAnon and other conspiracy theories. It's an NPR article, and they're citing a new NPR Ipsos poll. So, nice timing. And it's really frightening. I'll just tick down the list here. These are all incorrect statements, and then the number of people who believe them. The majority of protests that occurred this summer were violent. Of course they were not. 47% of Americans polled believe that's a true statement. You guys, we can't have this. We can't function as a democracy if people don't know the truth. Only 38% of Americans polled agreed with the true statement that this summer's protests were largely nonviolent. Wow. And 16% aren't sure. Crazy. This is crazy. Incorrect statement. COVID-19 was created in a lab in China. 40% of Americans believe that's true. 29% aren't sure. Only 32% know that's a false statement. Now we get really crazy. A group of Satan-worshiping elites who run a child sex ring are trying to control our politics and media. That's the central QAnon thing. A whopping 17% believe that's true. And an even whoppinger 37% aren't sure. They're actually entertaining the notion that it could be true. Less than half of Americans, 47%, know that that's not true. Satan-worshipping elites run a child sex ring, are trying to control our politics and media. 17% believe that's true. Do you remember we said yesterday that the Orange Menace won the title of most admired man in America with 18% of Americans? Overlaying the two results here, you think anybody from that 17% who believe in Satan-worshipping elites and child sex ring operators, you think any of those were among the 18%? Or any of the 37% who aren't sure that it might be true? You think any of the 47% who know that's a lie overlapped with any of the Orange Menace admirers? There are simple correlations here we can make. Humans do not play a significant role in climate change. That is an incorrect statement, of course. Humans do not play a significant role in climate change. 17% believe that's true. 14% unsure. Thankfully, 69% know that is true, so there's some hope. Several mass shootings in recent years were staged hoaxes. 12% believe that's true. That's the Alex Jones effect. 27% aren't sure. Now some correct statements. Barack Obama was born in the United States. 19% don't believe that. And again, there's that magic number, the 18, 19, 20%. That's the same percentage of Americans who voted for the Orange Menace. No, he did not win half the voters. No, because a third of the voters didn't vote. True statement, there is no evidence vaccinations cause autism. A dwindling 12% still believe that vaccinations cause autism, so that's good. Although 37% still are not sure. Yeah, the numbers of unsure are really high in this poll. A lot of people just don't want to say one way or the other. They honestly just don't know. Just a couple more here. Humans landed on the moon in the late 60s and 70s. 28% of Americans still either don't believe that or are not sure. The September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center and Pentagon were carried out by 19 terrorists supported by Al-Qaeda. Of course, that's the true statement. 27% of Americans either don't believe that or are not sure. So, yeah, like I've been saying, the good guys outnumber the bad guys, but the numbers are still in dire need of turnaround. One other follow-up from yesterday's show. I did watch the hashtag Force the Vote event, the live town hall. It was outstanding. I'm really glad I took part in that. Bree Joy Gray, she's fantastic. Cornel West, Jimmy Dore, Justin Jackson, Crystal Ball, Nick Brana of the MPP, Movement for a People's Party, some of the participants last night. If you don't know what I'm talking about, hashtag Force the Vote is a movement of progressives encouraging AOC, the Squad, and other progressive members of Congress to use the power they have. And they do have power now because of the tight numbers in the House. Those 14 or 15 votes are needed to make Nancy Pelosi Speaker of the House in the next term. Of course, she wants to continue in that role, but she needs their votes. So these progressives got together and said, hey, you know what? Let's play a little hardball here. Why don't you hold your vote, deny your vote, unless she promises a floor vote on Medicare for All? Medicare for All is arguably the single most important issue before us. So tell Pelosi in no uncertain terms, you're not getting my vote unless and until you promise a floor vote on Medicare for All. And last night in the town hall, they made their case, and it was an excellent presentation. So I'm going to encourage you to follow through on this. Of course, January 3rd is when it happens. That's when the new Congress is sworn in. They convene for the first time, and they vote on their leaders. You know, you can say all the right things in your campaign. You can even say all the right things once you're elected. But saying something and doing something are quite different. So if you missed the Force the Vote town hall last night, check it out online today. And it'll be there waiting for you, I'm sure. Yeah, I was really glad I tuned in. I have to mention the passing of Dawn Wells. Of course, she played Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island. And some of us, regardless of our age, really, because of the endless repeats in syndication, well, we can't deny that Gilligan's Island was part of our childhood. It'd be on at, 3:30 in the afternoon or sometime, But I just had to mention it because I had the chance to meet her once, and I actually had Thanksgiving dinner with her many years ago. When my kids were young, they did the national tour of a musical. They were child actors. And Dawn Wells was in that show. And I joined my kids and their mom in Detroit, where they were touring at the time. Joined them for a couple days over the Thanksgiving weekend. So I spent a couple days with Dawn Wells, and she was just the sweetest person in the world. Just fell in love with her. And, people die. Celebrities die all the time. Usually don't think too much about it. There's no personal connection usually. But yeah, I was really sad when I saw the news yesterday. I had to stop and sort of catch my breath. Dawn Wells was a sweetheart. What a nice person. Well, let's see. While we're at it here, I guess that's something we do at the end of the year. Who else did we lose? Well, of course, Representative John Lewis. I won't go through the whole list here, just some that I took special note of. Buck Henry, best known for co-writing The Graduate, and then he had those very odd gigs on Saturday Night Live where he hosted. A lot of people didn't even know who he was. He was a writer. He really wasn't a performer at all. Buck Henry. He also created Get Smart, if I'm not mistaken. Missed it by that much. Terry Jones, founding member, of course, of Monty Python. Jim Lehrer of the NewsHour, one of my early heroes, my journalistic heroes. Kobe Bryant, of course. I have to confess, I was surprised at the level of grief over Kobe Bryant. I mean, obviously, I knew he was popular. I knew he was famous, obviously. I didn't realize how deep and intense the reaction would be. Kirk Douglas, about 120 years old, so nobody was too shocked about that. Just a really fun actor. Maybe not the greatest actor in the world, but Spartacus? Are you kidding me? And my favorite, Lust for Life, when he plays Van Gogh, Vincent van Gogh. He did have a bit of a reputation for overacting, for chewing up the scenery, as they say. One of my favorite roles was he played a newspaper writer who covers this ongoing story of a guy trapped in a mine. And he does a lot of unscrupulous things to get scoops and to keep the story going. And the guy in the mine winds up dying. Sorry, spoiler alert. But really over-the-top dramatic in the way only Kirk Douglas could pull off. I don't remember the name of that movie. I'll have to check that out. One of your more famous CEOs over the years, Jack Welch of General Electric. James Lipton, Inside the Actors Studio. That was always fun. That was regular viewing there back in the day. Will Ferrell did a great parody of that on SNL. Country singer Kenny Rogers. Playwright Terrence McNally, 81 years old, Kiss of the Spider Woman. One of the many who died of coronavirus, as did Dawn Wells. I didn't mention that. Yeah. Coronavirus took her. Curly Neal. My dad took me one New Year's Eve to see the Harlem Globetrotters. It used to be their tradition. Is it still? Do they still come to Milwaukee here? Are they here tonight? For years and years and years and years, and maybe it still continues, the Harlem Globetrotters would come to Milwaukee. They played at the old arena every New Year's Eve, December 31st. Yeah, I wonder if they're here tonight. I'll have to check that out, if that tradition still continues. Oh, Bill Withers gave us two of the greatest songs, Lean on Me and Lovely Day. Also, Ain't No Sunshine, of course. But Lean on Me especially. Ooh, mercy. People have such a connection to that song. My son graduated high school in 2011, and the graduates sang that song. Ellis Marsalis, jazz musician, patriarch of the great Marsalis family. Oh, speaking of musicians, John Prine. Oh, we all shed a tear for John Prine. Also coronavirus. Early in the pandemic, one of the first famous folks to die from the virus. Only 73 years old. He had a lot of good years left. If you haven't heard it, check out I Remember Everything, recorded in his home. One of the last songs he wrote and the last song he shared with us. I Remember Everything. It's beautiful. John Prine. The great Little Richard. For me personally, Little Richard and Chuck Berry, two of the greatest influences in my young musical career as I went on to become a kid in a garage band and then a working musician. Of course, they were a little before my time, but as a teenager, I became pretty disenchanted with what I was hearing on the radio. A lot of kind of silly music and disco was happening. So I went on my own sort of personal search for music I could love, and I discovered roots rock and roll, and I discovered Chuck Berry, and I discovered Little Richard, and I said, wow, okay, this can happen? This is amazing. And then I began to understand the influences and the genealogy of music. And then from there, I was able to go further back and then appreciate the influences and the connecting threads woven through music up until my contemporary time. So, yeah, Little Richard was a really wonderful, important musician and performer for the world and for me personally. Jerry Stiller died. Oh, love Jerry Stiller. And isn't it nice that I see his name and just automatically start laughing? From his partnership with his wife, Ann Mara, back on, they used to do Ed Sullivan pretty much every other week. And then a couple of iconic TV roles, especially Frank Costanza on Seinfeld. Fred Willard, funny in a lot of roles. I think Best in Show might have been his ultimate performance. Oh, I'm looking at the list here. I didn't realize Ken Osmond died this year. The actor who played Eddie Haskell. Of course, for years and years, there was always this rumor going around that he died in Vietnam, but he didn't. But he did. He was only 76 years old. The great Carl Reiner, writer, director. The wonderful Alex Trebek. Everybody loved this guy. How could you not love Alex Trebek? There's only one bad thing I can say about Alex Trebek. I was disappointed that he did those insurance commercials. It was one of these kind of end-of-life things, this life insurance. It looked kind of scammy. I was kind of disappointed. It's like, Alex, what are you doing? Yeah, but we love Alex. Olivia de Havilland. There's another one. If you're a fan of old movies, which I am. I love old black and whites. And that's another one who kind of surprised us. Didn't she die years and years ago? She was 104. Olivia de Havilland. Most famous role, Melanie Wilkes of Gone with the Wind. Herman Cain, that was kind of a weird one. Coronavirus, of course, after partying with the Orange Menace. Oh, and then probably the biggest headline of the year in this regard, of course, Chadwick Boseman. That was another one, a reaction that I knew would be big, but I had no idea would be as big as it was. But the outpouring of love and gratitude to Chadwick Boseman was just beautiful to see. And of course, monumental Ruth Bader Ginsburg, all that she meant to the world and all that her death meant to our current politics. Eddie Van Halen, now only 65 years old, one of rock's great guitarists. Other musicians, actors, familiar names. Sean Connery, 90 years old. I'll mention one from the sports world here, Paul Hornung, the great Green Bay Packers running back from the glory days. And then just this month, in the final month of the year, Chuck Yeager, the guy with the right stuff. I know a lot of my friends were really saddened by the passing of Anne Reinking. I got a lot of musical theater friends. Collaborated with Bob Fosse to make that particular style definitive. And then just yesterday, we learned about Dawn Wells, Mary Ann. What a sweetheart. All right, well, Happy New Year. And before I go, I might make this an annual tradition. We'll see. I'm going to play you one more recording. And it's from the log of last year, right about this time. It was just before New Year's Eve. Now, back in those days, it seems like forever ago. This was December of 2019. The log was a weekly 1-hour show, not the daily half-hour show it is now. And on the 1-hour weekly show, we had a little different format, and we had a couple of regulars who would come in, Uncle Chuck and Chucky Bucky, known collectively as Chuck and Chucky. So this is one of those segments, and Uncle Chuck is telling the story of one of his New Year's traditions that he developed as a child. So we'll end the show with this. It's Uncle Chuck telling his New Year's Eve story.
Hey, I got a little thing for you to do on New Year's Eve. It's something we used to do when I was a kid. I still do it. Okay, what's that? A little New Year's Eve tradition? Yeah, exactly right. So my brother and I came up with this when we were just kids. Right at midnight, when you whoop-de-doo and you holler and say Happy New Year. What you do is you shave and a haircut 2 bits. You know that one? Dot, da, 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 dot,
Yeah.
dot, dot.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
dot, you know how that goes.
Sure.
Everybody knows that, right?
Yep.
Well, here's what you do. Right at midnight, you go dot, da, 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 dot. and then you stop right there. You don't finish it. And then the following year, right at midnight, you go dot, dot, you finish it. So it's the longest shave and a haircut 2 bits. It's a year long with a 1 year pause. So it's dot, 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 dot. And then you wait 1 year and you finish. You go dot, dot. And so then, of course, then you do the one for next year. Then now you did your dot, dot. You finished it and you all have a good laugh about it. And then everybody together, you go dot, 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 dot. And everybody just, and of course you have to do it a few times because it never fails. Somebody has to be funny, right? Everybody together goes dot, 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 and you wait a second, then somebody goes dot, dot. No, you weren't supposed to finish it. We have to wait a year. So, and that happens a couple, 3, 4 times before somebody finally, okay, dot, 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 dot. And everybody waits, and nobody chimes in. The joke is over. And now, okay, that stands, and we wait 1 year to finish it. Dot, dot, yeah. So there's your little New Year's tradition that I pass along to you, and you have fun with that. Especially, oh my goodness, if you have kids,
Yeah. Okay.
oh, they're gonna love it. They're gonna just love it. All right, thanks, Uncle Chuck. That is a pretty
That
good.
was a
That's
good
a
one.
pretty good little tradition.
Yeah, it's good.
So there you go. That's Uncle Chuck, Chucky Bucky, and myself from December of 2019. Da, 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 da. All right. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year. Best of luck. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Wear your masks. Don't go out. Stay home with your immediate family. And let's put all of our energy into making 2021 a great year of healing, of cooperation, of love and light and creativity and determination and grit and any other positive quality you can name. All right. Happy New Year. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.